Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the Unitarian Congregation of Mendon and Uxbridge. It's with great pleasure I'd like to welcome Reverend Daniel Gregoire for our service today, as Reverend Patricia Hatch is in Grafton, serving there. Today I'd like to start off today with Schubert's Lace Sonata, the third movement, D 968. Thank you.
Wow, thank you for that. That was quite beautiful. I just want to say good morning to everyone who's joining us online and here in the sanctuary. It's so great to be here, and good to see you all. I'm Reverend Daniel Gregoire. I'm the minister of the Unitarian Universalist Society of Grafton and Upton. And I want to say a special thank you to Patricia, Reverend Patricia, for engaging in our pulpit swap today, a long-time tradition of our congregations here in the Blackstone River Valley. It's great that we get to live out our covenant as Unitarian Universalists, congregations going all the way back to 1648 and the Cambridge Platform, where we have committed to visit with each other, to support and encourage one another in our congregations. These pulpit exchanges remind us that we are not alone in this wilderness, but rather we are part of something large, something ancient, and something beautiful. So welcome to our congregation here at the Unitarian Church of Mendon and Uxbridge, and we're glad that you can be a part of our worship service. Later in the service, during the joys and sorrows, we're going to invite you, for those who are joining us online, to submit your joys and concerns to the chat so that they can be read out loud in this space. We begin by lighting our chalice. This is a symbol of Unitarian Universalism and a tradition practiced by congregations all around the Commonwealth and around the world. This symbol reminds us of the light that burns inside of each of us and the light that inspires us to live lives of deeper truth and meaning. Let's consider this quote by Ralph Waldo Emerson. From within or from behind, a light shines through us upon things and makes us aware that we are nothing, but the light is all. Oh, wow. I invite you, I don't know if it's our custom to rise during the affirmation, but if you are so inclined, you might rise in body or in spirit as we recite our unison affirmation. Beginning with the word, love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Please join me in our first hymn, number 18, What Wondrous Love. And you can participate in any way that you'd like to. What wondrous love is this, O my soul? O my soul, what wondrous love is this, O my soul? What wondrous love is this that brings my heart such bliss and takes away the pain of my soul, and takes away the pain of my soul. When I was sinking down, when I was sinking down, when I was sinking down, friends to me gathered round, oh, to me gathered round, oh my soul, friends to me gather round, oh my soul. To love and to all friends I will sing, to love and to all friends I will sing, to love and to all friends who pain and sorrows mend, with thanks unto the end. I will sing, with thanks unto the end. I will sing. Wow. Yeah, I have to admit, this is the first time in over a year that I've been in a congregation with people in it and singing and experiencing worship together, and it really is a special thing to do. I invite you to join me in the responsive reading. This reading is the 139th Psalm from the Hebrew Bible. I invite you to read the italicized script. If I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the outermost parts of the sea, even there thy hand can lead me, and the right hand shall hold me. If I say, surely the darkness shall cover me, yea, the darkness hideth not from thee, but the night shineth as the day. For thou hast possessed my reins. I will praise thee, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. my substance was not hid from thee. Thine eyes did see my substance, yet being unperfect. Which in continuance were fashioned. How precious also are thy thoughts unto me, O God. If I should count them, they are more in number than the sand. Thank you. Now's the time in our service where we share our joys, sorrows, and concerns. I invite you to share those transformations and transitions that add depth and texture to your living. And as you do so, this is not the custom in my congregation, but the custom here is to light a candle. So you may do that in the way that feels most comfortable to you as you share.
Good morning. I'd like to welcome Reverend Daniel and thank you for spending time with us this morning on behalf of the congregation. Also, just got word that a co-worker's mother is held his family, so I'll light a candle for her and for him and his family.
Good morning. This is a candle of joy. Welcoming Reverend Daniel here and also Reverend Patricia going to Grafton this morning. One of the things people always know I talk about, I'm very passionate about building community, so this is great and welcome. Thank you for being here this morning.
Thank you.
This is a candle, I guess, of recommitment to this church. I was honored to be at the funeral of Mary's son Recorder on Friday. Several of us were there. And so I shared with Morella, passing Sonia. There's a quarter of our audience. There's 10% of us.
Oh.
And what that means. But I also believe that Sonia, she came to this church later. I don't believe she was a born member, but it came to mean so much to her. And that I think it's a challenge to us, not only really how to get more people here on a Sunday morning. I saw it as a challenge, when it's church, it's not Sunday going to church anymore, but no, it is this funeral, it is this community. However we find it, whether it's Grafton, Uxbridge, and Unitarian, whatever,
Yeah.
we need to keep the spirit alive for those who come after us. And even though we're small numbers, keep the light shining.
Always gotta remember that step. This is for my mother who had quite an accident this week. I'm wishing her a safe recovery for this, and thankfully injuries weren't too serious. Thank you.
Good morning. First time over here. That's exciting. This is just a candle for our oldest Sam, who's not here this morning because he's working on a project. He'll be graduating on Saturday.
Thank Thank you. Thank you. Were there any joys or sorrows that came in? Okay. I invite you to join me in a spirit of prayer and meditation. Spirit of life, Spirit of love, God of many names and no name at all, thank you for this community, this sacred space where we get to gather, for many of us after a very long absence. Thank you for the ways that COVID-19 has taught us the value of the people in our lives, the value of the spaces that we occupy, and the value of the memories that we make together. Help these things to bless us and to encourage us in this continued work. We are thankful for the opportunities to connect with our families and friends, the chance to celebrate milestones and transformations and graduations and new opportunities in our lives. Help us to be grateful for these things. Remind us that we are companioned even in the difficult times of our lives, the times where we have lost our loved ones, where we have experienced our own mortality or the mortality of others through major injury. We ask that all those who are in pain, all those who are suffering, that they might be comforted and that they might know peace. And yes, thank you for this community. Thank you for all of our communities here in the Blackstone River Valley. May we each be a beacon of light, a beacon of truth and of welcome in places that need those things so desperately. We also remember the suffering in our community. We remember the young woman who unfortunately passed away in Hopkinton under unusual circumstances, and we ask for comfort for her family and for her whole community during this difficult time. We remember the trials and the difficulties in the city of Providence, just recently shared on the news, and we ask for peace in that place and in all the communities affected by violence. Oneness of all life, help us to remember that we are indeed in this together. Encourage us and strengthen us and help us to see the beauty and the wonder in this life. We pray for all of these things and for so much more. Amen, and blessed be. Now let us share a time of silence together.
Set me free, Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Our reading this morning comes from the writings of Rachel Carson, a mid-20th century marine biologist and an early environmentalist. She writes in her book, The Sense of Wonder, a celebration of nature for parents and children, these words: "What is the value of preserving and strengthening this sense of awe and wonder? This recognition of something beyond the boundaries of human existence. Is the exploration of the natural world just a pleasant way to pass the golden hours of childhood, or is there something deeper? I am sure that there is something so much deeper, something lasting and significant. Those who contemplate the beauty of the earth find reserves of strength that will endure as long as life lasts. Here ends our reading. So again, I want to thank you for having me as a guest in the pulpit today, and I want to thank Reverend Patricia and acknowledge just how great it is that we are all like so close together and that we can do more together. That's another silver lining in COVID. It's taught us that we are better together than we are apart. I'm glad that we get to live out that ancient covenant that I spoke of, the Cambridge Platform from 1648. That's a long time to be doing something, but we've been doing it that long. These pulpit exchanges do remind us that we are not alone. And there is something very special for me in being in this space. I love architecture, I love history, and this space just brings all of my passions really together. And I am such a big fan of the New England Meeting House. It's a strange thing, I know, but it's something that I go around Massachusetts and I take pictures of churches in my free time. So I'm going to start by saying, wow, what a wonderful space you have here. And you should feel proud of this space because it is special, and the way that you've kept it up is remarkable. So my sermon today, I'd like to talk about wonder. And wonder, I would invite you to remember, is a profound sense of admiration, delight, and joyful surprise. And wonder begins with naming things. So again, wow, what an amazing space. This is truly beautiful. It's a space that actually sings. I don't know if you can hear it, but I hear the way that this room resonates, the way that it's filled with the hopes and the dreams and the faith of people down through the ages, a faith that has changed and grown and evolved over the years. And how wonderful it is that those people thought to erect a building to sustain a monument to God and a monument to human dignity in the form of the New England Meeting House. I am sure, while I've never been to the Uxbridge Meeting House, that I'm sure that it reflected this same character, this monument to the divine and this monument to the divine in us. And so you're right to be proud of this place. I'm proud that our tradition, Unitarian Universalism, has these kinds of sacred spaces, as much as they are a headache and a heartache to maintain. I'm proud of the generations of people who've passed through these doors into this sanctuary. And why did they do it? Why did they leave their houses on cold winter's day or hot summer days? It was to be inspired and to be reminded of the life within and the life beyond our understanding, a life beyond the limits of our imaginations. That's why you are in this room today. That's why I'm here. I'm mindful that people come here to connect more deeply with themselves, with their families, with their friends. We've come to become more fully human in these kinds of spaces, which is an amazing thing to do. Folks have come into this gorgeous rooms and other rooms like it to encounter the sacred. But most of all, we've come to these places to name the holy, and to give it so many marvelous names. We call it God, we call it Spirit, we call it love, we call it oneness, we call it unity, and sometimes we call it wonder. Whatever it is, it matters that we call it. It matters that we take the time to name that thing. There's always been a power in naming, and that is a power that I want to call our attention to today. So I'm going to invite you to join me in looking around. Look at where we are. If you've been in this space more times than you can remember, I promise you there is still something that you can discover, a detail that you've maybe missed for the past 30 or 40 years, or however long it's been since you've been here. So look around. What do you see? What do you hear? What can you touch in this space? And if you're watching at home, because we have to acknowledge those who are not with us physically, what are you noticing at home? Let's name those things. I know for me, being a lover of architecture, I can name so many things. I'm seeing beautiful dental molding. I'm seeing sconces of brass. I see pipe organs, columns, pilasters, beautiful windows, 12 over 12. I see a red carpet. I see the mahogany-stained railing in the pew boxes. What do you see in this space? Notice and name those things. This is a practice that will serve us well both in this time together and beyond our time together. We must take the time to name the things that we see, that we touch, that we hear. We can't just allow our lives to pass in front of our eyes without noticing and naming. You see, there is a deep spirituality that grounds us when we are able to name and describe our experiences. And in the naming, we broaden and expand our awareness. It's a remarkable thing. The more you see and notice and name, the more you will see and notice to name. There's a trauma therapist named Elaine Miller Karras, and I had the chance to meet her a few years ago. She did some groundbreaking work with survivors of the devastating earthquake in 2011 in Haiti, which is where my family is from. And in her work, in Karas's work with the survivors of the earthquake in Haiti, she was able to help the survivors that she worked with achieve a sense of calm and balance, despite being in a state of hyper-arousal, which is what happens when we experience any kind of trauma or crisis. We are just hyper-aware, hyper-vigilant. And she was able to help the survivors of the earthquake experience a sense of calm by simply noticing where they were and who was around them. And so she had a simple exercise that she would have them do. She would have them, I can't do it here, but find a wall and to lean against the wall so that they felt supported, they felt their body weight on the wall, and then to simply name what they saw. So supported by the wall, the survivors would say things like, I see a tree, I see a bird, I see a house, I see grass, I see rubble, I see my cousin, Claudine. And in the naming, they were able to come out of the crisis, to come out of the trauma, if only for a moment, and experience a sense of calm. There's an amazing thing that happens when we name things. We are able to come out of our own anxieties and re-inhabit our own bodies and be in the present moment by pausing and naming. I got to meet some of those survivors firsthand when I went to Haiti with the UU Service Committee in 2015. And these were people who really had learned a life-saving lesson. And they were connecting with their own inner resource, their own ability to stop, to pause, to name. And of course, in doing this, they were practicing deep breathing exercises. So there was a whole constellation of things that happen when we pause and name. So again, they were able to connect with their own inner resource and to thrive. These survivors were thriving in a very challenging landscape. The power of naming is deeply encoded in the Western imagination, and we find it described in vivid, almost comical detail in the second creation myth that is contained in the Hebrew Bible, in the book of Genesis. I don't know if you know this, but there are 2 creation myths in that one book. So in the second creation myth, Adam, the earth creature, joins in a process of creation. And this process of creation is by being given authority to name all the things that the imaginative creator God brings forth from the earth. He joins in a co-creation process. So if you don't remember the story, it goes like this. After all of the big things were created, then some of the smaller things needed to be created, the animals. And so they were kind of formed from the earth in the same way that Adam, the earth creature, was formed. And so as they're coming into being, Adam would say, that is a lion. I will call this an alligator. I will call this a badger. This will be a salamander. That's a monkey, an owl, and the like. Of course, in some ancient language that is lost to us today. It's actually a very funny story if you read it very closely. But in the process of naming things, in this case, the animals, Adam exercises a degree of dominion or control over these subsequent creations. It is a likeness unto God, to use a 19th century Unitarian term by Channing. Now, dominion or control over creatures or the natural world, we understand today to be a false doctrine, right? If ever there was a pretense of control or dominion, that is the thing that has put us in the ecological crisis that we are in today with climate change. So dominion, control over the natural world equals bad. However, there's a different way to understand having power, and there's a different way to understand our power. Our power to name things gives us a degree of not so much control, but mastery with, power with these things, rather than those things having power over us. So even in the funny creation myth, at the heart of the Western imagination, there's a powerful grain of truth for us today. And that is that naming is a generative, creative process, and it gives us extraordinary power, and it's relevant today in all of our lives. The act of naming is an act of creation unto itself. Now, in my own life, I've experienced this incredible power too, this generative power of naming. Naming is a noble act. Naming creates a space for all sorts of possibilities, all sorts of excitement, and yes, wonder. It creates a space for wonder. For me, just the simple act of naming my feelings in a particular moment is one of the most powerful tools in my self-care kit. And with COVID-19 still happening, I've had to use that self-care kit a lot. Perhaps you can join me in that sentiment. But being able to pause and to observe and then name has really changed things for me in a remarkable way. Being able to acknowledge that I'm feeling hungry, I'm feeling angry, I'm feeling lonely, I'm feeling tired. All of this is my interior dialogue. Naming these feelings and other feelings transforms their power over me, right? And I'm able to regain a sense of mastery over myself and over my responses by simply naming what it is that I'm feeling. But one has to pause to do that. Now think about the many ways that we go through our days in a completely mindless, sort of way, where we arrive from work to home or home to work and we don't even remember how we got there or what happened along the way. How much better would our lives be? How much richer would our experiences be if we were able to be present the whole time? And why is it that we've forgotten how we got to where it is that we've gotten, or why it is we're opening the fridge anyways? It's because there's all sorts of dialogues that are happening in our head that are completely unacknowledged, that are just happening like a train completely out of control. I, for one, am a much better person for having acknowledged my feelings, and then, as a consequence, had a bite to eat because I was hungry. And when I get enough rest, I have the patience of 10,000 Buddhist sages on the brink of nirvana. We are all transformed when we can acknowledge and name what it is we are experiencing. The magic of naming lies in the way that it exercises the mind. Naming allows room for questions and appreciations. It grounds us in the experience. It anchors us in the present moment. My wife, Kate, and I were married during COVID-19, last August, in fact. And in October, we had a honeymoon in Algonquin, Maine, for a few days. While in Maine, we visited the Rachel Carson National Wildlife Refuge. Perhaps you've been there too. It's in the town of Wells. It's a small coastal preserve, and a small portion of the land is where Rachel Carson actually had her summer home. Carson, as I mentioned earlier, was a famous marine biologist and naturalist, and she studied at Woods Hole right here in Massachusetts. And in fact, while she is not a Unitarian Universalist herself, she was an agnostic, and many of her friends were Unitarian. And her first major work with the environmentalist movement occurred either in Duxbury or, I think it was Duxbury, in a bird sanctuary. That's probably more facts than you need. But the owners of the bird sanctuary were Unitarians and connected to the Duxbury Church. Anyway, back to the wildlife refuge. The area has a 1-mile loop for walking, very easy, very manageable. And there are some beautiful lookouts in this refuge area. Beautiful marshes, streams, and meadows. It's Maine coast, it's rocky, it's beautiful, it's dramatic. Most will recognize Carson from her work in 1962, the book called Silent Spring, which woke us up to the widespread and harmful effects of pesticides on humans, and the way that these pesticides were poisoning birds, frogs, fish, and other wildlife. This goes back to her work in Duxbury. And many credit Carson with launching the modern environmental movement. Now, there's no question that the world is a better place because Carson lived. There's no question that the world is a healthier place because Carson lived. Unfortunately, she died way before her time of leukemia in 1964. But her scholarship and her beautiful writing has informed generations of activists and scientists. And I want to say a little bit about her legacy before going back to the refuge. So her legacy is a discursive way of describing the natural world. And discursive in this sense means just using all of the words, all of the adjectives to describe the things that she saw. Carson did not overlook anything. She did not take anything, no matter how minute, for granted. And her words leap off the page, even today, with an athletic kind of lyricism and a way of rendering what could be very dry material into elegant prose. She was a scientist, but Carson described the world of woodlands and coastal areas with the sensitivity and delicate reverence of a poet. And in 1958, she wrote an article advocating for the protection of coastal areas, and she had this to say about the rocky coast of Maine, again, to kind of illustrate just what beautiful lyrical prose she would use to describe natural phenomenon. She writes this of the coast: "There is nothing, really, nothing for human words to say in the presence of something so vast, mysterious, immense, powerful. Perhaps only in music of deep inspiration and grandeur could the message of that morning be translated by the human spirit. As in the opening bars of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, music that echoes across vast distances and down long corridors of time, bringing the sense of what was, of what is to come, music of swelling power that swirls and explodes even as the sea surged against the rocks below us." This was her description of a day at the beach in Maine. Wow, how is that for describing the coast, for naming things? One can see glimmers and echoes of the transcendentalist heart of our own tradition of Unitarian Universalism in her words. She was not a transcendentalist, but we can see and hear the images and the words of some of the prophets of our own tradition, folks like Ralph Waldo Emerson, Henry David Thoreau, and Margaret Fuller, who does not get enough credit. In those very woods of Maine, where Kate and I were walking, Carson also walked, and she observed and named everything that she experienced. Carson made it a point of taking her great-nephew Roger into those same woods in the 1950s when he was just a toddler. And on their walks, aunt and nephew, in the early mornings or rainy afternoons, Carson would encourage little Roger and encourage his sense of wonder as she invited him to name all that he saw and touched and smelled too. Roger got to name the trees, he got to name the flowers, the seeds, the animals, and Carson, though being a scientist, was not interested in him getting the names right. Roger didn't have to memorize the scientific terms or the binomial nomenclature of what he saw. That was not what was needed. It was less about precision and more about connection. In naming, little Roger was encouraged to ask questions about what he saw, to make up delightful stories. In naming, Roger was invited to wonder. Roger was given permission to join in the act of co-creation and to emerge. So there's an emergent quality to naming. We rise up too as we name the things that we see. So he was allowed to emerge alongside those things, the acorns, the little pine trees, the chipmunks and badgers. There are no badgers in Maine's woods, but I'm going to mention them. These walks were so much more than just a passing fancy or a pleasant way to spend the time with a kid. They were transformative encounters with stick and stone, pine cones, a chance to approach the essence of the divine, to touch it, and to give it a name. I believe that all of the sensory objects in the natural world point to luminous realities beyond itself, and that those realities are entirely beyond our understanding. So the thing that flower points to is just beyond our ability to comprehend. And sometimes I use a useful shorthand in desperate hours, and I call that reality, that flower, that person, that beautiful meeting house points to, I call that thing God. But we all have names for that reality. Whatever we call that essence, that oneness, our Unitarian Universalist tradition calls us to connect with it, whatever we call that thing beyond what it is we are able to see and touch and smell. Our tradition calls us to name that thing, to give it many wonderful names. The stories of prophetic women like Miss Carson are a source of inspiration for me and for all of us. Miss Carson's experience is a useful roadmap, complete with journal entries and field notes for all of us. These stories allow us to live out more fully our Unitarian Universalist principles, especially the principle that invites us to search for deeper truth and meaning in a free and responsible way. This is our fourth principle. And wow, what a principle it is. Our fourth principle is a summons for us to join with our forebears in taking the most mindful approaches to living. And we do that by naming our experiences and taking note of everything we see and hear, taste, touch, and smell. So let's stop. Let's put down the phone. Let's come out of our thoughts spiraling out of control. Let us lean with our backs against the wall and feel supported and held. And in those moments, let us name. Let's pause. Let's pray. Let's meditate. Let's count every single blessing. Let's make journal entries. Let's experience and name. We shouldn't deny any aspect of this reality. So this means naming even the difficult things. And know that in this naming, that we are connecting with one of the deepest spiritual practices available to all of us. You see, our lives are terribly short, and they are made even shorter when we are disconnected. COVID-19 has taught us that. So let us use the time that we have been given to better appreciate the world around us, and that can even be the world that we experience in our rooms, in our homes. Let us see each day for what it is, a chance to expand our minds with wonder by naming what we experience. And that's because the mind was made for wonder. May it be so, and amen. All right. Thank you for that. So now's the time in our service where we invite you to give generously to support the works and the ministries and the mission of this congregation. I'm not sure how that happens here, but I know that you know. And for those of you who are online, I encourage you to find the website and to give generously there as well.
Today's offertory piece will be Chopin's Mazurka Opus 59, number 3.
Wow. Just a few announcements, actually just one. The Women's Alliance will be meeting in Goss Hall on Monday. That's this Monday, the 17th, at 1 p.m. Are there any other announcements?
Just an announcement, the Russ Wiseman Band will be practicing this afternoon. That's not on.
All right, anything else? All right. Well, actually, I'll mention one more. If you are not already on the UUs of the Blackstone and the Boroughs Facebook page, I would encourage you to do so. There's some great information on there. The congregations have been trying to keep it up to date with some posts about what's happening so that we could support each other's initiatives. Again, that's I think it's the Unitarian Universalists of the Burroughs and the Blackstone. So definitely check that out if you can. So let's pause while we prepare ourselves to extinguish the chalice. The light of the chalice is now ours to carry out into the world. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth or the warmth of community. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Would you please join me in reciting the Serenity Prayer? And please rise in body or in spirit. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. And in our goings, let us remember this, that whatever it is we dream we can do or believe we can do, we can begin it this day. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it, so let us be bold in our living and in our loving, bold in our giving and in our forgiving, so that the world awaited becomes more nearly the world attained. Go in peace, name things, and be a blessing.